Blog Talk Radio.
Choices, decisions, frustrations, and pain. Knowing I'm going to forget her someday. While I still can, I'll challenge all my loved ones, every friend, to look inside their hearts and understand that I will love them. I will love them while I still can.
Well, hello and welcome everybody to Alzheimer's Speaks Radio. I'm your host, Lori LeBay, and I just love doing this show. Today we have a wonderful lineup for you, and I'm very excited to get to that. But again, we always get new listeners, and so I like to just take in the beginning a little bit of time to tell you who Alzheimer's Speaks is and what we're up to and why we feel what we're doing is so very important to society at large. Bottom line, I developed Alzheimer's Speaks to shift our dementia care culture and to give voice to all around the world, those living with the disease, those caring for people who are dealing with it, both patients and family and friends and workplaces, as well as researchers and advocates, musicians, authors, movie producers. It's just really been fun to hear everybody's voice and to be able to give hope in a disease that is, packaged and sold as so devastating. People are living rich, full lives, and there's lots of support out there. And so I hope you'll stay with us today to learn more. Now, one of the things that I do ask of our audience, excuse me, that is not my Skype garbling, that is my throat. I don't know if any of you guys are having problems with allergies, but this girl is. So if you have any remedies, please let me know. Anyways, I do ask our audience, if you enjoy the show, if you can share the episode on your Facebook. It's just a click. Email it to people. If you are a business and would like to embed this particular episode into your site, you can do that. All these things are really one click ready. If you belong to a Google group or you're LinkedIn or if you tweet, all of these little clicks are so important. And that's not about, get Lori LeBay's program out there, because I don't even feel this is my program. I feel this is the world's voice, and all we're doing is joining together collaboratively to share information and to help those out in need and to educate those that don't even realize what a massive, massive crisis we're in with Alzheimer's disease and other dementias. So again, if you can help us out there, we'd love that. We also like to have our audience participate in the conversation. And there's two ways you can do that. One, you can call in live if you'd like to talk to us live at 714-364-4757. That's 714-364-4757. Or you can always use the chat box to communicate with us, and I will be monitoring that as the show goes along. Now, every once in a while, because this is internet radio, we might get a little garbled voice, but hang with us. Usually it's only a few seconds, and I would hate for you to lose valuable content in the rest of the show just because of a few seconds of garbledness. One of the things I've learned through my journey with my mom in 30 years is the little things aren't nearly as important as the big things, and to look at the big picture and where the value is in things. It's also taught me tolerance, which I think is, for me anyways, is really needed when it comes to technology. So again, Thank you all for listening. Thank you for spreading the word and making us the number one recognized influencer for Alzheimer's on the internet, according to ShareCare and Dr. Oz. It's just a phenomenal recognition. And again, we sure as heck didn't do that alone. We're just facilitating the conversation. That is something I think we can all take pleasure and pride in. As far as highlighting things, people are always asking me, where do I go? And I get this question from people all over the world if I'm looking for support. And one of the fantastic places people can go is the Alzheimer's Association. So the easiest way to find your Alzheimer's Association in your area is to go to Alzheimer's Disease International. They're known as ADI. And you can just Google that, or you can go to www.alz.co.uk. Again, that's www.alz.co.uk. The other thing is people are always asking about studies, and there's a great tau study going on right now, and it's in its third trial, and that is done with Alzheimer's studies. So again, you can Google Alzheimer's studies, or you can find them on Facebook. There they go by the Alzheimer's team. But again, it would just be www and then alzheimersstudies.com. And then many people have different types of dementia, and I'm just starting to align with various associations right now so that we can get the word out for these different types of dementia. So the Lewy Body Dementia Association is real easy to remember because it's just www.lbda.org for Lewy Body Dementia Association.org. And we're going to be working and having the aphasia people on here shortly, and we're working with others. So if any of you listening out there are connected with organizations that are organizations of different types of dementia, please have them contact me because, again, I just think there's so many different types, and we all need to get educated, including me. I've been in this for 30 years, but by far I don't know everything. And things are constantly changing. So I think it's a great way that we can share information and learn together. And I would be amiss if I didn't talk about the Purple Angel Project, which is the new global symbol for dementia, and they're starting to use it in hospitals. It's really taking flight over in the UK, and I would very much like to see that lift off here in the U.S. I am working with one town here, an organization in Wisconsin, and we are hoping to be the first dementia-friendly city in October. But we'll see. Maybe someone will beat us to it, and that would be just fine. If we were second or third or 12th, it doesn't matter. This isn't a competition. This is just about doing the right thing in the time that you have with the resources that you have and joining forces together. So I think I'm going to mention two other things that are more for entertainment and engagement. One is Puzzle with Me, which is a company that makes puzzles that are larger size that a person with dementia can do either alone or you can, work on a puzzle together. But they're just easier to handle. They're all research-based. And then, of course, Music First with Choral Health. I just absolutely love music, know the power of music. I still see it with my mom in her end stages, how it inspires her. And so go ahead and check out Choral Health, and that's CORO health.com. So with no further ado, let's get into this program because it is really quite exciting today. I kind of fell into a conversation with Ramsey Bahrawy, and he has 30 years experience as an estate planner and an elder law attorney. He and I hooked up through LinkedIn. I don't know how many of you out there use LinkedIn, but LinkedIn is incredible, just an absolutely incredible way to connect with other professionals to learn and to share knowledge with. he basically represents individuals and families that are both in simple and really sophisticated estate planning strategies. And he also provides families with special needs, whether it's children or adults, on estate planning matters. Mr. Bahrawy hosts and produces a television show called Your Money and Your Life. And the show is really dedicated to educating the public on issues particularly relevant to those over 50 when it comes to estate planning, elder law, elder services, financial planning, and medical care. And most of us just bundle that all up into a package and go, they'll take care of it. But it's really important for us to understand what this is all about. His show is actually distributed to 30 states, and he's appeared as a speaker on elder issues in local senior centers and social organizations and legal forums. Mr. Bahrawy has also appeared as a guest on several different radio programs in Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Florida, and Utah. So welcome. How are you doing today, Ramsey?
I'm doing great, and Lori, thank you for inviting me on the program and giving me this opportunity.
Well, and I should ask you up front, because when we talk off air, I always call you Ramsey, but would you prefer that I call you Mr. Bahrawy? Because I can easily do that.
Ramsey is absolutely fine.
Okay. I think, when we're dealing with these types of issues, I think the more casual and personal that we can be, I think just opens the door to ease the conversation, because this is a stressful topic. I mean, this is life and death and, protecting assets and, do I have enough money to live? These are big, big things that you work on. And so, for me personally, I like it when I can feel comfortable enough to be able to call somebody by their first name and not feel so formal. And I don't know if our guests feel that way or not in our audience, but I know for me it just kind of lessens my nerves there. You have just a massive amount of experience in this field, and in conversations with you, I know you're just as crazy as I am in terms of, spreading the word and tackling technology to try to do it, which isn't always an easy thing to do, to break new ground. And so I really applaud you for doing that, because I do think it's a high need, and it's evident with your reach and the syndication of your program how important this is. So before we start, I just want to say thank you for all you do from all of us.
Well, thank you for your kind comments.
Mm-hmm. Let's roll into the first question that I have for you. And it might seem a little bit basic, but, boomers are getting older. I think we finally all realized that we can't deny that, and I'm definitely one of them. So what are the 5 most important issues for people to address as they age? And needless to say, a person with dementia is no different. These issues are still with them, if we've got a disease or not. This is just good business planning, I would imagine. And please correct me if my assumptions are wrong, because you're not going to embarrass me. That's what we're here to do, is to clear the air and give good advice, if at all possible. Okay?
Okay. Well, with regard to important issues, first of all, before I get into that, let me just quickly explain what I do in my law office and why I do the videos that I do and why I do the speaking engagements and come on to radio shows. My goal is threefold. It's to educate, it's to motivate, and it's to inspire. Now, the purpose of the educating is to make people aware of these issues. Hopefully, the education will motivate them to move on and change their behavior. And then the inspiration, hopefully, is the stimulation that they need to go on and change that behavior. So that's why I do what I do. Now, with regards to the important issues, the Boy Scouts have a motto, and that motto is be prepared.
Mm-hmm.
People, not just Boy Scouts, need to be prepared as well. And unfortunately, people don't acknowledge that they will someday live with an age-related disability and therefore don't prepare for that. I believe that preparation has to start by considering the fact that you may have an age-related disability and then considering the available elder care, the available housing, consider your health history in order to be able to do all of that, consider your financial issues, consider lifestyle issues, consider your legal documents. All of that has to be considered, in my view, as one package. And unfortunately, people don't do that. Unfortunately, they act in crisis mode. When there's a diagnosis of a serious condition, they act. Or when they see there's an issue with their finances, they act. Or when they realize that the big home that they're living in, they cannot stay in that home anymore. They either can't sustain it financially or they just can't handle the stairs or whatever the case may be. Then they take action. It is my view, based on what I have seen from my clients, that decisions that are made in crisis are usually bad decisions. Decisions that are made when things are calm, when you've had an opportunity to reflect and an opportunity to understand the decision you should be making, those are usually decisions that are good decisions. And that's what I want to help people do, make good decisions.
Well, and I so agree with you. It's like, you know what, there's enough pressure when you're under crisis and in the mix, so don't add to it. I mean, you know, we should be proactive. We shouldn't be fearful of having these discussions. I mean, we all understand good business, but for whatever reason, we're scared to take that on sometimes in our personal life and say, this would just make my life run smoother if I had these ducks in a row. And so I think sometimes it's just taking that simple philosophy that we get in our workplace and applying it at home and going, this shouldn't be scary. You know, so much of what we do is driven by fear. And wouldn't it be much more fun and comfortable if it was driven by hope? You know, and knowing
I absolutely agree.
Yeah, knowing that you're doing the absolute best you can do. So as far as, and I loved what you said about, your focus is really to educate and motivate and inspire. Those are not things that I think I typically hear from an attorney's mission statement, and so to me that's really, really refreshing, to hear that, where you're coming from and why it's so important for people. So can you just highlight again the 5 most important issues that people need to address? Just boom, boom, boom.
The first one is be prepared, and what I like to quote to people who tell me, I've got plenty of time for that tomorrow, I don't need to worry about being prepared today, is I like to bring to their attention a quote from Shakespeare's The Tempest, which is, what is past is prologue. What that means, basically, is what we do or what we don't do in our younger years will have a huge impact on our future. Yep. It is always better to prepare, and if the contingency doesn't occur, then that's fine, you were ready. But if it does happen and you're not ready, then what are you going to do? So I just want to make sure I point that out. I mentioned a moment ago, people will say, I don't need to plan for this. People also say, and which I think is a huge mistake, is, this type of planning is only for wealthy people. Well, planning doesn't just include having a trust or having a will. It includes a durable power of attorney, includes a living will, includes a healthcare proxy. It includes documents that every person, in my view, from the age of 18 should be considering and should be having. So it isn't definitely not just for the wealthy. Another mistake that people make, and people unfortunately have a historical propensity to defer and even avoid any estate planning, whether that attitude stems from not wanting to think about what may happen in the future, not wanting to think about their death, or whether It stems from an inability on their part to actually appreciate the value proposition in making that estate plan. And that's what I quite frankly think is the problem, is people really don't recognize the value proposition in making an estate plan. They can see how it works for a wealthy person who may save money on estate taxes or may be able to pass property to another generation and somehow save some money doing that. But they just don't understand the value proposition of having in place the health care proxy, which as Shia had that in place, a woman who was on life support in Florida, we wouldn't have had 7 years of courtroom battle amongst the family. Wouldn't have happened because she would have actually had in place in Florida. They don't have health care proxies, but she would have had living will in place, and it would have stated exactly what she wanted done, and there would have been no dispute over that. But instead, they ended up in a big lawsuit. And of course, if you don't have these documents, some of these documents, then you end up with, as in the Shia case, the guardianship proceeding in a state court, or you can end up with what's called a conservatorship proceeding, where somebody's trying to gain control over someone's finances, so that person is no longer competent to handle his or her finances. This can all easily be handled by simple documents called a durable power of attorney, a living will, and a health care proxy. Those documents are $100 as opposed to $100,000 on in the Terry Shia case. Huge mistake.
Ramsey, you're not cutting in and out, but you're fading in and out, and I'm just wondering if your phone, if you're moving that by your mouth at all, or if it's just a technology thing. So I just thought I would mention that to be aware.
Okay. I will. Can you hear me fine right now?
Right now it's good. Yeah. And it could be technology. I've just never had that one happen before. So usually it'll get garbled, but it doesn't change volume. So I just wanted to double check on that because you're giving us such good information. I just don't want to lose any of that at all. So can you kind of tell us what are some problems that are caused, by a person not planning? What do people run up against? And maybe you can kind of frame that in the world of dementia. If someone was diagnosed and they didn't plan, what could be some of the crisis situations that they're going to be forced to deal with now because of that lack of planning?
Well, if the person diagnosed with dementia had his or her own bank account and there was nobody jointly on that account with him or her, that person wouldn't be able to manage that account anymore. And since there's no durable power of attorney in place that would allow a third party to do that, then a conservatorship action in the state court would have to be started. Third parties could object to that. It's a daunting and an expensive process. If a person diagnosed with a dementia didn't have a will in place and then decided, I've been diagnosed with dementia, so let me go out and get that will. Well, I as a lawyer, I'm not a medical person, but I know a little bit about dementia. I can't have that person sign a will, so I need to ask this person a series of questions. And if based on the answers to those series of questions, I don't get the sense that this person, appreciates the wealth that he or she has, and wealth doesn't have to be a lot. Okay, I mean, the term wealth doesn't necessarily characterize how much money you have. Doesn't appreciate who his or her family members actually are. Well, unless you know those things, you can't really write a will. If you're owning property jointly, you can no longer convey that property to your surviving spouse or to your children or anything because, again, you don't have the legal competence to do that. You're handcuffed. It's a terrible situation, and I like to do the planning sooner so that if something like a diagnosis of dementia comes along, it's not going to handcuff a family. It's not going to force everything into a probate proceeding or into a guardianship proceeding or into a conservatorship proceeding, which, as I said earlier, can be very daunting, can be very expensive, and it can also divide a family. So, it's really problematic. Now, somebody who doesn't have a dementia, a crisis situation that they can run into is they have, a serious, massive heart attack, or they develop a cancer, and again, because they don't have these documents in place, they're not able to take care of their finances so their bills don't get paid. The checks that come in don't get deposited. If they've got a rent check that comes in, they have property that they're renting out, that rent check can't get deposited because the person is not authorized to do that. It's a crisis situation. And so then what planning does somebody do when they're in crisis? Well, they immediately say, let's try to figure out a way to handle this thing, and let's go run up against a guardianship. Let's do all this stuff. And they start making some very foolish decisions. Decisions that had the person done this 5-10 years earlier, they wouldn't have. And then, of course, there's no opportunity if you are diagnosed with this type of condition. There's no opportunity to do any effective asset protection. Would take assets and protect them from future creditors. And for a lot of older people, the largest future creditor is the nursing home. And so that's what they want to protect against. And that becomes difficult to do as well because, each state administers its own Medicaid account, and the Medicaid rules as they're currently written call for a 60-month or 5-year look-back period. Any transfers during that look-back period are disregarded. Most people will make transfers in the last year or two, and they're all disregarded. You need to do some planning at least 60 months in advance.
Well, and isn't that even questionable? I've heard over and over and over that, it's 5 years, but it doesn't mean anything because they can change the law, and you might not be grandfathered in. Even if you followed the law at that time, it might not,
So far, whenever there's been a change with regard to the Medicaid regulations, in Massachusetts it's called Mass Health, and California it's called Cali Health. Like I said, each state administers its own Medicaid system. The rules have never been retroactive. Now, that's not to say that in the future they may not be. I know Massachusetts is currently considering changing the look-back period from 5 to 7 years. And if they do, I'm telling all of my clients that from the information I have from a service I subscribe to is the Massachusetts legislature will not make it retroactive. It will start on the day the governor signs the bill 7 years forward. So we're here in Massachusetts, in any event, we're comfortable that whatever law is going to get passed, and it's a regulation. I shouldn't call it a law, a regulation that it's not going to be retroactive. Will other states make it retroactive? They could. And, of course, you also have to understand that we're here in 2014. We've got Obamacare that's coming in place, and how Obamacare is now going to intersect with Medicaid and with Medicare, and how it's going to change things. And that's a whole different show for you, so I'm not going to even get into that. But that's something people have to think about now, how Obamacare is going to fit into all of this.
Yep. That's and that's on the news every single night. I mean, it's twisting and turning and just craziness, absolutely craziness, with stuff. So it's and it's stuff we can't control. So, what you're talking about is stuff that, all we can do is the best we can with the knowledge we have at the time. And so to prepare for it is a lot easier to go in and then update and adjust if things change versus to start out fresh and then have this, be in a crisis mode to begin with and then dump this barrel of legal and financial stuff on top of it, to know that that's in place, and it's like, at least that can wait, and I can, let me just, work with my loved one and be where I need to be in this space, during this transitional time, just makes so much more sense, but, we just don't do it, which is so strange. But, I was there. And one of the things I just wanted to say, I was there, and I was one that poo-pooed it and pushed it off, and I was like everybody else. And then we decided to talk with my folks because they hadn't done any planning. My dad was a printer, and my mom worked at Deluxe Check, so they weren't rolling in the dough by any stretch. And so they were a believer that they didn't have enough, that it wasn't necessary. And I said, you really need to get this done, and this is why, and you have more than you think you do. And, how do you want it to go, once you pass? Where do you want, do you want control over it, or do you want it to be a crapshoot, or do you want the state to get involved? Well, no, we don't want that to happen. I said, well, then you've got to take some action. And so they met with an elder law attorney here, Chris Major in Minnesota, who's one of the top elder law attorneys and is also a good friend of mine. And it was so funny because I brought my folks in, and Chris said, okay, now you got to get out of the room. And my folks said, no, she's staying with us. And they're like, Chris said, no, we're going to talk turkey. We're going to talk about every single one of your kids. We're going to talk about their spouses. You know, how stable are they? Do they have a drinking or alcohol, drinking or drug problems? You know, could they go on bankruptcy? Are they behind in their taxes? We're going to talk nitty-gritty stuff. And my folks said, no, we want her in here. Lori knows everything anyways. And so I was privileged to sit through that. And it was so eye-opening because there's so many things that we don't think about that can impact who we choose to help us out in these situations, if it's a power of attorney or a trustee or, someone on a bank account with you. And it was really eye-opening. And one of the things that we decided as a family was my husband and I and my folks, because they were just battling, going in and meeting on this stuff, was I finally talked to my husband and I said, you know what, I'm having a really hard time from an ethical standpoint telling them to do it when we should too. So we all did it together. And that took a lot of the scare out of it for my folks, and it got us where we should have been to begin with, having this type of protection. So I throw that in just for listeners. If you're struggling with a parent or a friend that doesn't want to do it, ask yourself, have you? And if you have, is it time to just update it? And if you do it at the same time and they know they're not alone, sometimes that's all they need.
Well, I congratulate you on that approach. That's a very good way of doing things, and interesting that you bring that up, because I, on occasion, I will have the boomer children come in and they'll say, we really need mom and dad to do something, but they really won't come in. And how do we broach this subject? How do we get them to come in? And I'll say to them, listen, you were just here. Why don't we right now talk about your stuff? Mm-hmm. And then you go back to them and say you met with the lawyer and you talked about this estate planning stuff, and it's pretty complicated stuff. And then ask them, Mom and Dad, What did you do? And how did you do it? And you'll be amazed that they will tell you if they did something, or they'll tell you if they didn't do something. And then you can start that conversation, and that might impel them to come in at that point, because they hear that you're trying to do the very same thing.
Yep.
So I congratulate you on having done that.
Well, I did that in real estate a lot. I just saw the fear of being different and the fear of, this is about the end of my life. And it's not about the end of our life. It's about controlling our life while we're here and having a little control when we're gone. Making sure that what our beliefs are and what our wants are, that they move forward. It's just a good conversation. I mean, you don't want to be hooked up to a life support system, and maybe that's against really what you wanted, or maybe it's the other way around. Well,
the other way around works too, and I want your listeners to understand that just because somebody goes out and they get a living will, and oftentimes living wills will say, I don't want to be kept alive by any heroic means, I don't want to be resuscitated, et cetera, but you can do the opposite. You can say, I do want to be kept alive, I do want to be resuscitated. So, the document can be written both ways.
Yeah, and
very important
that is
for people to know that.
You're exactly correct. And from what I saw, it can be, as technical or as personal as you want it to be. You can write it in your own words and describe it. And sometimes people talk about doing that, with an addendum, and that it injects your feeling and how you've lived your life and why, and those types of things sometimes can really help family in terms of dealing with it. So, these are important things to think about. I've had actually friends who have had adult children get in car accidents, and they're paying the medical bills, and they can't get any information from the doctor because their kids don't have a power of attorney. So this is not just about end of life. This is not just about disease. This is about protecting your life as you want to live it. And know that you've got somebody in your corner who has the information if it's needed, you know. So it's very, very important stuff. You know, with Alzheimer's or dementia, I mean, people get so overwhelmed, needless to say, you know, as soon as they get hit with the diagnosis. How is it for you as an attorney to have to go through all this nitty-gritty paperwork when someone's in crisis? That's just got to be just complicate things so much more.
Well, specifically with regard to dementia, problems that I've run through is, for example, let's say we have a husband and wife, and you know, wife is pretty much a stay-at-home mom, and husband was the one with the job, and part of mom's responsibilities at home was to take care of where the family documents were. That was part of her responsibility. Mom develops dementia. She can't tell Dad where the documents are. Dad never knew where the documents were. So they come and see me and they say, we don't know where the documents are because my wife can't tell me where they are, or vice versa. It could be the opposite, right? Major problem. So what I try to recommend to people, especially with the software that's available today, is that, you know what, get yourself a piece of software and start, organizing your life. I mean, your personal documents, your legal documents, your insurance documents, driver's license, your Social Security card, all that stuff. Put it all in there. Some of these softwares will also print out reports, where they can print out a report of every doctor that you're seeing and for what condition and how often you're seeing that doctor, print out all your prescriptions and medication. And, with managed care, oftentimes you need to actually bring all that information when you see a doctor for the first time. Well, if you're able to put all that into a piece of software, all you have to do is push a button. And, of course, you have to keep up with it, obviously, as you change doctors or as more prescriptions are added. You need to add that. But you've got it at a moment's notice. It makes perfect sense. I run into issues oftentimes where there's been one person, this is with regard to dementia, where there's one person who did all of the organizing at home. The other person doesn't know where the documents are. And we've got it. Now, fortunately, with regards to deeds to a home, that kind of stuff, we can go online. Registry of Deeds has a website. We can find it, and we can download it and print it. But everything else, we don't know where it is.
Yep.
Or I'll have people come in with the proverbial shoebox. And it's loaded
shoebox,
with all kinds of documents.
Shoebox, that's small. I've got the rainbow box.
The what box?
The rainbow box. It's a grocery store box, It's just
okay. Yeah.
I had put everything. Again, this was when I was married. I had this weird feeling when I was 40 that I wasn't going to live. It was just like this overwhelming feeling. And so I told my husband, because I did all the finances, I said, if something happens to me, you are not going to have a clue. So I put everything, and I took up a whole shelf of 3-ring binders of all of our stuff and labeled it. And it was like, oh, why didn't I do that ages ago? It just made it so much simpler, so much simpler.
You're absolutely right. The other issue you can run into with somebody who's doesn't necessarily have dementia but has a little bit of memory loss, and today if you have an online bank account, you may actually choose no longer to receive a paper statement, but you need a password. And what if that person can't remember his or her password?
Yep.
Can't get access to the bank statement.
Yeah. Well,
it's a big problem.
Well, or to the computer in general, it might not even just be the bank, but it might be just the computer, because a lot of us have, passwords, and we have multiple passwords, and they're not the same on different ones because some of them require us to update them every time we go in almost. And, it's hard for us to keep up with them, let alone somebody else. And so, where do you keep those passwords? One thing, there are wristbands out there now, and I miss because I can't remember the name of the company, but there's a few different styles out there that actually have a UBS little drive in them, and so you can put in basic medical information, contact information. I wouldn't be putting my passwords and stuff on there in case you lost it. But, you know, just to be able to track and help out with that doctor's communication and so forth. So if any of our listeners know of any great wristbands that they use, please put those, stick them in the chat box. And we should be using those again. A lot of times we look at it that's just for the person with dementia, but the primary care partner needs one too, because what if they got in a car accident and couldn't get home?
That's right.
We have to think bigger and better than what we're doing at the current thing. Can you tell us what are three of the biggest mistakes that people make as they age?
Well, the first thing is as people's life progresses, their circumstances change. Their finances may change. The composition of their family may change, or the needs of dependent family members may change. And it's important at some point to amend, modify, and review an existing estate plan. And I can't tell you how many times I've had somebody walk into my law office with a plan that's 30 years old, and it's got named in there as the guardian of their children, somebody who's deceased, and their children aren't minors anymore. It's got named in there as the personal representative of the executor under the will, a person who's got dementia, let's say, or is in a nursing home, who can't do the job. I mean, it's obvious that this document is no longer effective. It's never been reviewed. And then they ask me, well, can we just amend it? I say, listen, it is so old, it is so ineffective, we need to start from scratch. Do you realize that the Massachusetts Statute of Wills has changed at least twice in that time? I said, we need to write you a whole new will. So it's very, very important for people to review. Now, frankly, not everybody needs to review at the same pace. Some people need to review annually, and those are usually people who have significant assets. And some people can review every 3 years, some people every 5 years. I think every 10 years is a little too long. Because just take a look at what's been going on with the federal estate tax law. It was changing every year.
Yeah,
and now we have a so-called permanent tax in place, but it's possible that Congress comes along and changes that again. I mean, if you think of every president we've had in the last, let's say, 20 years, under every president we've had a new tax law. Reagan had a tax law. Bush 1 had a tax law. Clinton had a tax law. Bush 2 had a tax law. Obama had a tax law. They each changed tax laws.
Yep.
You need to keep up with your estate planning documents because those estate planning documents may be affected by those tax laws.
Good, very, very good point.
And then, of course, if you've got somebody who's using trusts, the law of trusts can change. I mean, here in Massachusetts, recently the legislature enacted the Uniform Trust Code, which now changes what those trusts look like. And it's very important with somebody who has a trust predating that to have it reviewed and make sure that trust can be brought into conformance with the current law. Very few people do that. I have clients of mine for whom I have written trusts, and I've sent them letters, certified mail return receipt requested, saying, we need to have a review, and I'm willing to do it on a complimentary basis. And I just want to make sure that what you have still works. Yeah. I don't hear back from them, which is a mistake on their part. They may have an ineffective trust. Yeah.
Yeah, and people, then we're back into the whole crisis mode again. So you tried to be preventative, but it's not a one-time prevention because nothing stays stagnant. It's constantly shifting and changing, and you really need an expert to be able to interpret that, or I sure as heck do, because, man, it's complicated. It's just... Well,
whenever I hear somebody talk about, doing it yourself, and you can go to one of the websites online and you can get a do-it-yourself will, trust, healthcare proxy, power of attorney, the whole 9 yards. And I can't compete with those prices. But what do you get when you do it yourself? Well, first of all, they don't stand behind the document. You take all of the risk. You need to go and look up the law and find out what the requirements are under the law. And if you don't have it properly witnessed and properly notarized, or in some states they allow for what's called holographic wills, which means handwritten. Well, Massachusetts doesn't. And Massachusetts has very specific requirements in terms of how it has to be typed and what the paragraphs have to look like. And again, I'm only speaking to Massachusetts. the entire burden has been shifted to the consumer in these website situations. So what I tell somebody who says, I'm going to do it myself, I say, listen, if you have trouble reading, you're going to make your own eyeglasses. I go, no, I'm going to go to the eye doctor.
Mm-hmm.
You know what? If you have a legal issue, you do the same thing, except you go to a legal professional. That's all. You just make sure that you get competent, good advice from an experienced lawyer who can lead you in the right direction. I mean, you do it yourself and you make a mistake. Where are you? You're no further ahead.
Yep.
And you asked me a little bit earlier with regard to issues, areas where people make a mistake, and I want to come back to that just for a moment. A lot of times, parents will sort of overlook sibling rivalry issues, which I think is a major mistake, because just beneath the surface where everything seems okay, oftentimes there's just a tinderbox of issues, and they many times will explode after mom and dad are gone. And mom and dad, while they're alive, have an opportunity to handle those issues, and they should, in my view.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, and it's really common. I mean, there can be a lot of time, and this happened in my own family. My folks had a cabin, and so they wanted to leave the cabin because they loved the cabin themselves. So they left it for all three of us, and all three of us have very different lifestyles, and it's complicated, and it's not real easy, and so sometimes trying to be even and equal isn't always the best when it gets down to the whole relationship business. So that is something I think really important to talk about. And, giving thought to your personal belongings. Is there something special you want to give to a certain individual? Write those things down. A lot of times people will take, duct tape and put them on the back of something or on the bottom of something and, write it down. But, have a little inventory list and let it be known to somebody, because so often if something happens, people just come in and start grabbing stuff. Or better yet, start giving it away when you can see the appreciation on their face of them receiving it if you don't really need it. Start reading things out.
That's a great idea.
Go ahead.
I think by the parents recognizing the sibling rivalry issue, they're able to do two things. If they can sit down, I'm not saying they can solve the problem, but they can sit down, they can explain their view, meaning the parents' view. They can try to maintain some family unity, and at the same time get some common understanding. So, for example, going with the scenario you provided, if there's the cabin house, and the cabin house is going to go to somebody, if mom and dad tells everybody that's what's going to happen, not a piece of paper says it, and, they'll come to an understanding and they'll accept it. But when they see it on a piece of paper, they feel hurt, and nothing was ever said to them. And that's the problem. You need to communicate these things. And I agree with you, it's not easy to do, but it's so important for the future welfare of that family.
Yeah, and that's a nice way to look at it, because I think the future welfare of the family. Because I think as parents, I know for myself, and I only have one daughter, so for me it makes it easier. But I've got nieces and nephews and all of that, and how is it all looked at? And, how far are you going to stretch out? Or, some people like to donate their money, especially with Alzheimer's disease. Has that been discussed? Because, you just hate to see these family feuds that happen after the fact, and they can a lot, come into play. Or, again, with dementia, when is somebody competent? Do you want a voice in that yourself ahead of time? Some people are starting to videotape or even make documentation in terms of, this is when I want my license pulled. This is when I want you to take away the keys in case I don't know. These are the signs that I feel are critical, and that helps the family. make those tough decisions, because the person with dementia may or may not be logical and accepting of their own words or their own video, because they may or may not recognize themselves at that point, or their thinking process may have changed. But in the family's soul, it'll make it a little less stressful, saying we had this discussion, we were proactive, these were their wishes, and then being able to frame it in a way that this is the disease talking, and that's why we've got this rough spot. But we talked about this openly, and they were very adamant. These are the signs, and this is what they wanted me to do. So, with dementia, it's almost kind of like a do not resuscitate. There can be different things that come up. The two that stand out to me are driving and when should I be placed? When is it time for me that I can't live at home anymore? And that's a difficult one for both family and a person with dementia. But the people with dementia that I talk to say over and over, they never want to, harm their loved one or jeopardize their household. And, most of them say, hey, if it's time, put me away. It's okay. I'll get better care there. That's what I'm just going to need at that time. But as couples, many times those conversations are not had. And it is very important.
There sometimes are creative ways that some of these issues can be broached. For example, I was aware of a situation where there was a widow, and her family wanted her to go to adult day services, and she absolutely didn't want to go. And they were talking with the provider, and the provider was like, she doesn't want to come, there's nothing we can do. And then she was talking with a gerontologist, and the gerontologist said, no, why don't you try it this way? Why don't you have the adult day provider contact mom and say, gee, mom, would you like to have a job? And if she says yes, then she'll come every day and she'll do an 8-hour shift. At the end of the week, you take mom's money, put it in an envelope, put mom's name on there, and have the adult day people enter the envelope. Mom went to adult day faithfully, 8 hours a day, until she passed away. Because of the way it was, because of the approach that was taken.
Yeah.
Instead of telling her you've got to go and bullying her, it became her idea.
Yeah, big difference. Our approach is huge, and we really have to think, how would we like to be addressed in these various situations? What would we want? And knowing that what we want might not be what's best for the other person, because they're not the same. Even you can have your very best friends or your spouse. You might be, really socially just a social butterfly, and they might be an introvert. And so they're going to need a different approach. They're going to need a different living environment. And we so often just think, well, I like it, so everyone else is going to like it. And we have to, if we're going to be person-centered, we have to think about, what would this person want? How is this going to affect them? How would this have affected them before they had dementia? That's a real good sign to look at. Harry Urban is one of the men who has dementia that's on my dementia chats, and I'll never forget the day he said, I like to relax. Before I got dementia, I still do. I don't have to be busy all the time. But sometimes we think, that someone has to be engaged all the time because it makes us feel better, like we're doing something. But we have to really look at the person's wishes, and those things would be great to be documented. And if not documented, at least have the conversation. But I think when you're meeting with someone like yourself, it's an ideal opportunity to open the door to a friendly conversation that really is about just life in general. How do we want to live? Because that's really what you do.
I've written a book, and it's with an editor right now, and hopefully we will get it published before the end of this year. And the title of the book is Live for Today, Plan for Tomorrow. And that's really what I try to do with my clients. I try to explain to them that you want to live today, you want to enjoy today, you want to enjoy yourself as much as possible. But then when there's a detour on the road of life, or if there's an emergency or a crisis situation that comes along, you plan for it, you're ready.
Yeah, exactly. I do want to just put a shout out to our listeners right now. If anyone has a question or a comment, please use the chat box, or you can go ahead and call into the show, and I would be glad to take that call, and we would move forward from there. And I should probably also mention that, Ramsey can't give legal advice. That's something that you really have to sit down on a one-on-one. We're talking in general terms with things here, and to get you thinking, what's what. And if he's not in your area, I'm sure he'd be glad to refer you to somebody in your area if you're not aware of where to go, because it is important to have someone who really specializes in these elder laws. Even for somebody with young onset, a lot of the information in some ways still applies, I would think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Ramsey, in terms of how you would approach estate planning and so forth. Is that a correct statement?
In terms of the estate planning, yes, but there's also now a new regulation with regard to Social Security, where somebody who's younger and has been diagnosed with Alzheimer's is now fast-tracked for Social Security. So that's actually the good news for somebody who has early onset Alzheimer's. They can actually be fast-tracked and get onto Social Security disability, which I think is a good thing.
Great. Now, we just have a couple minutes left. I can't believe how fast time has gone. So I want you just to get a little bit in on why do people ignore age-related disability insurance, kind of, and end-of-life planning. What is your philosophy behind that, and how do we get them around that?
Well, I think a lot of people basically say, I don't think that's going to happen to me. I don't think I'll get dementia, or I don't think I'll get cancer, or I don't think I'll have a massive heart attack, or I don't think I'll have a problem. And what I try to get people to focus on is their family health history. I've had actually clients say, I'm here to talk to a lawyer. Why do I have to talk to you about my family health history? I said, because your family health history can be, let me rephrase that, can be a predictor of what's going to happen to you. And if I have that information, then I can guide you in the right direction in terms of what planning you actually need to do based on that family health history, because I don't know what your family health history is unless I ask you. And it's very important that I know what it is. Now, that's not a guarantee that just because you've got a relative that lived with dementia, or you had a relative that had cancer and died from cancer, or had a cardiac problem, or had a deep vein thrombosis, let's say, or a brain tumor. I mean, that doesn't mean you're going to get one, but it is something to look at. And there is testing that can be done, as I'm sure you know, to find out whether or not there's a genetic component to a particular condition. That can be done. I'm not recommending that it be done, but it can be done, and you can find out what's going on. But I think it's really, really important for people to recognize that, given the wonders of modern medicine, we're all going to live longer. And in living longer, we're also going to live with some form of age-related disability. We're going to have joint replacements. We may with a dementia. We may end up with other issues, and we should plan. And if it doesn't happen, great. But if it does,
Yep, very good. How about how to raise and discuss subjects such as estate planning and driving? We kind of talked about that. Home health care, though, we didn't talk about, and the future of long-term care. Do you have some quick tips on that to give our audience?
Well, with regard to long-term care, first of all, a lot of long-term care insurance companies are backing out of the business of insuring for long-term care because they're finding it way too risky. With regard to long-term care, there's a sweet spot where I think people can look at buying it, and that's around age 50, 52, something like that. And I say it's a sweet spot because the premiums at that point are lower, and yes, you may be paying in for 20 plus years, but you'll be paying it at a lower level. So then when you do need the policy, it should cover. You also need to do research on these companies and make sure that they are well capitalized. Because, again, if a company is not well capitalized and 10 years from now they declare Chapter 13 or Chapter 7 bankruptcy, you're out in the cold. But that's not good either. With regard to housing, I think people need to think ahead in terms of, can I continue to live in this home I'm living in, or the townhouse I'm living in, or the condominium I'm living in? Will I need to downsize? If I'm living in a townhouse and it's 3 floors, can I still do the stairs? If I can't do the stairs, what are my options? And again, if you do this sooner rather than later, you're not going to be acting in any sort of crisis mode, and you're going to say, okay, let me look around, let me see what kind of place I would like to move to someday. And you can take your time. You can do this, a couple hours on a Sunday and go check one place and another, and just kind of do it at your leisure and figure out what you want to do and get some ideas of what are the costs, how much it's going to cost to move to a particular place, whether it's going from a home to a condominium, or if you're going from a home to assisted living, or whether you're going to independent living. I mean, as you know, there's a continuum of care out there, and you can choose various different places and find the one that you think might work best for you and your spouse, or just for you if it's just you. Do you still want to be living in the area where you are? I mean, or are you considering, if you're going to downsize, moving away somewhere else? And again, I have clients of mine that go to Florida and immediately buy something. I tell them, well, don't buy something right away. Go rent for a little while. See if you like that community. See if it meets your needs, if it suits you. And, you may find it doesn't, and then you know what? You've only rented for a couple of months, and then you can check out some other places. I mean, because you want to find a place at some point where you can actually settle. And then, I also tell them, look, you're heading down to Florida. I will provide them with a name of a lawyer in Florida who does this kind of work. Consult with that lawyer and make sure that whatever documents I prepared for you in Massachusetts will be effective in Florida as well. And if not, then let's amend them to make them effective in Florida. Let's make sure that, all of your legal needs are satisfied.
Yeah, very true.
Taking the keys is one of the most difficult things that I think a son or daughter has to do. And I always recommend, if people ask me the question, I've been asked the question numerous times, I always recommend find a third party, find an intermediary to help you with this, because you know what? If you're the one suggesting to take the keys, you may have a sibling who's going to end up siding with mom or dad, and then you're going to end up with a division in the family. You know what? It's just not worth it. So your first phone call actually should be to your siblings to make sure you're all on the same page. And if you're not, then find an intermediary to come in who can assess mom or dad's driving and then provide a recommendation and then take it from there. But have a third party be the bad guy, not you.
Yeah, and we do have a radio show. We actually spent 2 hours, did a special on driving, and Matt Grewal has a company that is wonderful. So just scroll down the archives, but it was really interesting because we had insurance, we had caregivers, we had people with dementia, we had a doctor coming from a lot of different angles. We discussed a lot of different things. Ramsey, I can't thank you enough for being with us today. It's really been just fun chatting with you today. How can people get a hold of you? What's the best way for them to reach out to you?
They could call me at 978-682-1141, or they could email me at Ramsey, R-A-M-S-E-Y, at B as in boy, A as in apple, H as in Harry, R as in Robert, A as in apple, W as in woman, Y as in yellow, LAW.com.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for being with us, and enjoy the rest of your week, okay?
It's been a pleasure being on with you, Lori. I had a great time.
Yep.
Thank you.
We'll talk soon. Thank you. Bye now.
You bet. Bye-bye.
Before I introduce our next guest, I just want to highlight some information that's popped up during this past week. Our last radio show, we had Max Wallach on with his co-author. He is a young man, 17, who wrote a book, Why Did Grandma Put Her Underwear in the Refrigerator? And it's an absolutely fantastic book to be able to have a conversation with your children. Not only does it teach them lessons, but it reminds us as adults how we really need to deal with things. Very simple, very powerful. One of 2 books I have that I won't give out to anybody. That's how good I think this book is. Again, it's called Why Did Grandma Put Her Underwear in the Refrigerator? So you can find that on Amazon. You can listen to our interview in the archives on the radio show, or you can go to the blog as well and find more information on that. Our next radio show, I just want to mention to people, is going to be August 27th, so that's next Tuesday, same time, and we are going to be talking about engaging people, and we're going to be talking with someone who has a company called Science for Seniors, and then we are going to have Trevor Mumby on from the UK, and I am so excited to have him on. He has just some wonderful, wonderful tips on how to engage, and he calls them hand grenades, and how powerful they are. And they're all little things that we do and don't do. We just have to be conscious of when we do them, and they can make a huge, huge difference there. Our last Dementia Chats was on August 13th. That can be found, the recordings, if you go to Dementia Chats on Facebook, or you can go to the website and find that as well. We talked about the importance of friends and family and relationships, and I am going to be changing the website around. We're in the process of doing some updates. The Dementia Chats free webinars that we do is the 2nd and 4th Wednesday of every month, and those have become so popular, and people are using those for training programs for staff. They're using them for support groups, and they're also using them for family conversations. So we're going to make its own tab so they're a little bit easier to find on the website. And then our next Dementia Chats will also be August 27th. As well, and we do those at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. On the blog, there were some, I thought, great articles. One, I have to do a little bit of bragging about. KSTP TV did this just phenomenal piece on Arthur's Memory Cafe, and we have 2 groups that meet, but they really got to the heart of the importance of these groups. So please go to alzheimersspeaks.com, and then over to the right is our scroll for our blog, and you'll see it scroll down. You can click right to that article. But the members were they just did a fantastic job. I was so proud of them. There's also an article on cocoa and coconut milk, and we've gotten lots of different comments on that. Barry from Indonesia wrote an article on tips for people that are diagnosed. And it just has some helpful tips for them. Carol Larkin wrote a nice piece on, is it dementia or delirium? Again, there's information on Max Wallach's book. And then there's also a video about a dementia village that CNN did. And that was, it's the same village that I had put a video on before, but it's just a little bit more in-depth coverage there. So again, wanted to mention that. If you just tuned in and you're looking for an Alzheimer's Association anywhere in the world, remember you can go to Alzheimer's Disease International and just go ahead and Google them. They'll pop up, or you can go to alzheimersspeaks.com and go to our sponsorship page and find them. You'll also find there the Alzheimer's Studies, which is a new study for tau. That's a clinical trial. Information on Puzzles with Me, the Lewy Body Association, and Music First with Choral Health. And Music First is all about an app, so you can have music with you to shift someone's attitude, which can really, really be helpful. So our next guest here is Amanda Sillars, and she is a force in the geriatric healthcare field. For the past 20 years, she's specialized in adult day services. Amanda has evolved into this industry as the most recognized expert and advocate in this field. She's also a national speaker. She consults. She's an author and an educator. Her commitment and passion for improving the adult day service industry is undeniable. Amanda is the founder and CEO of Total Adult Day Healthcare Solutions, the most innovative and successful consulting and training program for adult daycare in the nation. Under her leadership, the company has helped over 500 centers nationally and globally open or improve their operations. Amanda has also authored over 10 industry standard manuals for adult day services, and her latest book is called Cognitive Optimization Program for Adult Day Services. Welcome, Amanda.
Thank you so much. Good morning. How are you?
Good. We've been having just a fun conversation with Ramsey, and I hear you're going to be on his program a little bit later in the year, so that's great. We'll be able to see you on there as well. Well, I'm really excited to talk to you today and learn more about what can be done, because I think there's so much that can be done to improve services. So why don't we, start with, if you can explain what is adult day services for older people?
Sure. Well, adult day services it's a program of services that are provided during the day. There's two major types of adult day programs. One is a health model, and the other one is a social model, is what it's called. And the health model will generally have a nurse, and that's kind of the hallmark, is that it has a nurse as part of the program, and it may also have a social worker. It will have an activities program. It may have a physical therapist, an occupational therapist, a speech therapist, psychological counseling, dietary, nutrition, and so that would be a health program, which would have more health services. And then there's the social program, which would generally have, and I'm talking generally, every state in our nation has different regulations for adult day services. And the social program generally will have a activities program at a minimum, and it may also have social work. It may also have some nursing. They also may incorporate other health-type services as well. And it's a program where people can go during the day and receive support, either health support or social support, or someone to look after their family member, or the person can, get out and not have to sit at home all day watching TV or not having any kind of social interaction whatsoever. And a lot of the programs will run, some of the programs run 4 hours a day. Some programs will run 12 hours a day. And they support people who need a break, say some respite services, and they also support people who are working and they need someone to take care of their family member during the day. And it also helps people who live by themselves and need that daily support to maintain living in the community for as long as possible. So they're really set up to keep people from being institutionalized, to keep them from going into the hospital, from going into the emergency rooms, but maintaining their health in the community for as long as possible.
Okay. Now, do you get into evening programs as well as day programs?
I don't. There are some in the country. I don't know a lot about them, but that's certainly a new program that's coming up. I think it's growing. I think the need is growing, as well as there are programs that serve people on the weekends as well. Yeah,
I see it being just a huge, huge need. And I know in New York, the Hebrew House has one that's just fabulous. And everyone talked about it, and they were like shocked that no one, because they've said our doors are open. We will bear it all and share what we've learned through this. Because the community has really embraced it. And, it's a way to be able to use a facility 24/7 versus going and buying a new one for a new business. And, it just makes a lot of sense in many ways. So wonderful. So there's the health model, and then there's the social model. Do you see a difference in these two for somebody with dementia, or do you see them, all ages kind of mixed together, or all abilities mixed together? in adult day?
I've seen both. So a lot of programs will have a dementia program associated with it. So it's a specialized dementia program within the program. The health model will serve, anyone who needs the support, the health support. And the health model is the one that is generally, and again, this is when I say generally, and I apologize for not being more specific. There are 50 different states with 50 different regulations. So in general, the health model is the one that's reimbursed by the Medicaid waiver programs, the managed care, maybe Medicaid straight directly, and that's and they pay for all the services in the health model. There might be a share of cost associated with it, and so that's generally where the people come from with the health model, because it does tend to be maybe a little bit more expensive for a private pay. So that's where I've seen kind of the difference in the day model, the social model. There's a lot of dementia-specific social models as well, which can get reimbursed by different programs, like the respite programs, the Older Americans Act. I had it written down, I'm sorry. The Older Americans Act is one, and there's a National Family Caregiver Support Program, which also covers some of those respite, which the social daycare may be good for. Both. Either one would be fine for the respite programs.
Okay. Now, how is there a cost for people to attend these, or can that be covered? Does it vary from place to place and state to state, or?
Yeah, the reimbursement. So if Medicaid, let's just kind of give it a global. If Medicaid is paying for it, and again, that may be through a managed care company, it might be through a waiver program. It's reimbursed through a Medicaid program, oftentimes, and the reimbursement rates are different for every center. So, or every state may. I'm sorry, I apologize for that. Every state will have a different reimbursement rate for the center. So some states may reimburse only $40 a day, where other states may reimburse as much as $70 to $80 to over $100 per day for the health model. The social model, the cost can run between $10 an hour, for an hourly rate, up to $70 for a whole day, maybe even $80 to $100 for an entire day. It's varied. It is covered though by I caught the tail end of Ramsey and yours talk, and the long-term care insurance does pay for adult day services as well. Okay.
So another good reason, people, to get your paperwork in order, that long-term insurance can really help out with some of these things. And not only can it help the person stay engaged, but it can give, the care partner some respite that definitely is needed, because nobody wants to be tied to one another 24/7. None of us are all that special. No matter what we think.
And I also wanted to say too that if we're going to talk about reimbursement, who reimburses the centers, there's also Veterans Administration will very often pay for adult day services, and the long-term care insurance, and there's respite programs too. So if you check with your local adult day service program, you can ask them, what reimbursement sources do you accept?
Okay, and they're really pretty good, I would imagine, about helping people process that paperwork, because all that finance stuff, it's just so overwhelming. And I know a lot of the assisted livings and things is just like, we'll help step you through this. And I would imagine Absolutely. The adult day is the same, because they want you to come, and so they've got to figure out how to streamline this and be able to speak it in a normal language that everybody can understand. And if you're talking with somebody and they start using acronyms that you don't understand, just tell them to stop. Just tell them to stop. We in the field, we just start flipping this stuff out. We don't even, we just think everybody knows what we know. So just tell us to stop. And, exactly. And put us in our place in a nice way, and just smile and go, what is that?
Right.
you know,
right. And
because you need to understand what it is in great detail. I'm sorry.
Exactly.
Go ahead.
No, and I was just, just when you were talking, I thought, it's always been a frustration for me that there's not more reimbursement for adult day services for people who need it. Managed care has been in the industry in some states for a while. They're getting into it a little bit more. The cost savings that this industry provides for the communities, for the state, and for the federal government is astounding. It's there's been, I believe there's currently a piece of legislation in the federal government to allow Medicare to start paying for adult day services as well. It hasn't been passed yet, unfortunately, but I know there's a lot of work on it trying to get it through. It's because it's such a cost saving. If I'm a managed care company, and as a managed care company I want to save money, and I can send someone to an adult day health care center instead of having them stay at home where they're not getting any support whatsoever, they go into the emergency room, then they go into the hospital, then they go out of the hospital, get home health. They might go into a nursing home after that for a short-term rehab stay. They're discharged from the nursing home, instead of the home health. Then they get home health, and then they're discharged from home health, and the process starts again. The amount of money that now has been spent on that one person who, had they been able to go to adult day services, had adult day services been paid for through another revenue stream or allowing more people to get in there, because it is costly, would save so much money, say, for Medicare, just Medicare, or any of the managed care companies who are looking to save money. It's such an amazing program and it's so humanistic that it takes care of people during the day, and they're not alone. And it's just amazing.
Yeah, I have a couple of people in our memory cafe that I work with that attend, and one of them is a man by the name of Bill, and Bill absolutely loves going to adult day. And he's very, very social, very interactive, and the reason he loves to go is he's got a buddy. He goes 2 days a week, but on one day for sure his buddy's there, and they play cribbage. And Bill can still play cribbage. He can still count, And Marlene says, yeah, I can tell if he's had a good day or not, and that is all summed up by if he won in the cribbage game or not. And it's kind of a standing joke with them. But, he says, I like it. There's good food. People are really respectful. We have fun. So sometimes people think that this is just for, the only people that go to adult daycare, sit in wheelchairs and drool and can't talk.
No.
That is far from what it is. So can you explain to the audience a little bit more of who goes and why they go?
Sure. A lot of people go. There's so many different reasons that people would go. Say someone has diabetes and depression and arthritis. So they may have functional impairments that they're not able to, they need support at the home. They're having trouble getting around the house. They can't really get out anymore. They can't get transportation. So they end up kind of sitting down and watching TV all day and really not getting out. They're not eating well. They're not taking care of themselves. They may not be checking their blood sugars as they should. And if you don't exercise when you have arthritis, it gets worse. If you don't exercise when you have depression, it gets worse. The diabetes needs exercise as well. These are just, one little aspect of adult day services. So that person would be perfect to go. They would get socialization, which would help with the depression. They'd get exercise, which would help with all three of the problems. They'd get support with maybe learning new ways of opening a jar or cooking. Someone would cook for them. They would get a nutritionist, at least one nutritional meal, if not two, and snacks that would go along with the diet. They'd get education regarding what kind of diet they should be eating, what kind of foods they shouldn't be eating, on exercising and keeping themselves healthy. They would get support from the nursing staff on taking their blood sugars, and someone would be monitoring the blood sugars to make sure that they didn't go out of control, or that they were all being taken care of. Contacting the physician if there was a problem socialization supports cognitive health, the depression, the depression, because now the socialization is in there. They may also be getting counseling at the center. Some states require psychological counseling services. You're just looking at a healthier person. Somebody who has dementia or early onset dementia, they would benefit from the program that they could go and continue to get stimulated. The family member who may need to stay with them most of the day or is concerned about leaving them alone would then be able to leave the home and feel comfortable that they could leave the home and their family member would be taken care of and in a safe environment. And they also get a lot of activity and a lot of stimulation, dancing, music, the nursing support. It's just, it's so powerful, these programs on how they take care of people. So they don't have to be cognitively impaired. It could be, some real health issues that they're having, but their cognitive is fine, or maybe somebody who's got, dementia that's in a higher stage or higher level, and they, instead of, again, having to go into a nursing home or having to move into assisted living, nothing's wrong with either of them if there's no other options or it doesn't work out at an adult day service center. But it's a place someone can go before they need to be institutionalized, or maybe they never need to be institutionalized and they can stay at the adult center and get really taken care of during the day, and their family knows that they're safe. And there's also someone to watch them. So if the van comes to pick up the participant at the house and the participant isn't there, there's somebody who understands what's going on, someone to watch them during the day and make sure they're okay.
Exactly. And, that was a important statement when you said, family knows that they're safe. Mm-hmm. One of the biggest things that I think we overlook is that sense of calm, because kids and friends, we worry about people. Mm-hmm. That's in families. That's what we do. And so we really need to take that to another level and realize, what it can do for us if we know that somebody's safe. And a lot of times if we approach it in that sense, the battle is over for someone who's resisting to go, because they know you care. Exactly. They know, bottom line, this isn't because you're trying to get rid of me. This is because you want to keep me active and healthy and all of those types of things. And especially for long-distance caregivers, even more so. And, can be very, very important. Now, people can also, in some, if I'm not mistaken, can get like showers and things like that. Absolutely. Too. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of centers that there's centers that have showers there. There's centers that have hairdressers who come in, barbers who come in, take care of, all kinds of things. There's centers that take the participants shopping to the grocery store. And there's centers that have, vegetable trucks or, produce trucks come to the center, which, just being able to get out of the house to get your groceries, it's something we all take for granted. If you are, your mobility is impaired or your cognition is impaired or you can't drive anymore, it's how do you get to the grocery store? How do you get? And something as simple as just getting your food becomes exceptionally difficult. So here's centers that allow for that or give that to the participants. Having somebody take a shower, and it's showers are where a lot of falls occur, and that's such a huge problem with this population. And falls cost so much to all of us with the Medicare and all the insurance costs if someone has a fall. So it's helping somebody take a shower and get clean and shaved, and just the ADLs, activities of daily living support that's provided at the centers as well, would bring in so much comfort to a family member to know that they're taken care of, and even the participant who really would like to have a shower but is too afraid to maybe go in the shower.
Yeah. Yep. Say, oh, I'm okay, but not always.
Mm-hmm.
And in showers, you brought up a good point. There's a lot of falls, but there's a lot of fighting over showers.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that I found, and I mention this every time someone says a shower and we're talking about dementia, is talking about even changing out the shower heads to rain shower heads and having them be handheld. Because the power of the water hitting them, them walking into that knot, even though we see it, we know it's there, we've turned it on, you can hear it, the whole 9 yards. They see it, but they're not taking it in all the time and processing it. So when they walk under it and all of a sudden it's hitting them, it can really scare them. Mm-hmm. And so a gentler, shower can make a huge difference, and one that's handheld so they can sit, so maybe they won't fall and take their shower sitting down can make a big difference. Having somebody there, allowing there to be help so that you don't have to do it all, so that you can still have that relationship as a spouse or a son or a daughter. Families struggle with these things big time, and it gets exhausting. And some people don't want to see their parent nude, and their parent might not want them, to be nude in front of them. So, respect that dignity as well, not only theirs but yours. What are you good at? And if you're not good at some of these things, let someone else do it. So it doesn't drain the core of your relationship. Now, I know not all listeners are going to be able to afford to do that as well, but it's food for thought, even when you're sorting out who's going to be responsible for, what with family and friends. Don't just automatically assign things, but give some thought to it. What is somebody good at, and what do they excel at, and what do they enjoy? A lot of us are good at things, but we don't have the passion behind it because it's just something we do. And you can be not so good at something, but be really passionate about the engagement, and it doesn't matter, So,
and it comes down to the person-centered. Why, that's the one thing of adult day. One of the big push isn't the right word, but one of the wonderful philosophies that's embraced by adult day services is the person-centered care, and that is, and I heard Ramsey talking about it a little bit too, is that you understand, get an understanding of why, instead of just trying, oh gosh, mom needs a shower, let's get her in the shower and let's get it done with. Why is she resistant? Is it because she doesn't want you to see her naked? Is it because you don't really want to see her naked and she's picking up on that, your discomfort, your stress, your anger? Is it because she had a fall and she's afraid to fall again? Is it because she's always been a very modest person and it's difficult? It's the same way in the center when they're giving somebody showers or taking care of them. The wonderful thing about adult day services is that people really get to know the participants. So it's not like they're at home health where they're in and out and they have a caregiver who may come in and may change every other week. They really get to know all the staff, and the staff gets to know them too. And part of person-centered care is talking with the family members and talking with the participant, finding out what kind of work they did before and, what their interests were, what their family was like, what their education was, all the psychosocial interview that you would provide at an adult day center to get that understanding. And then to look at it from the participant's point of view, like you said, they can't hear and they may not be able to feel the water the way they did in the past. So it's surprising. And to have that patience and that understanding and to provide that to someone who is uncomfortable just in taking a shower is such a gift.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is, and why we fight this stuff sometimes is amazing. But most of the time, what I hear from people, it's money that stops them. They don't think they've got the funds, and they don't reach out to see if there's support. And so have the conversation, investigate, find out for sure, and do it before you need it. We have to stop being afraid of stuff.
And it may be, it may take pooling the money. It may have the, the family members each put in, I don't know, depending on the, $50 a week, and have depending on how much they can put together, have mom go to a center once a week if there is no funding sources for this. And I'm really a proponent of there needs to be more funding sources for this program, because ultimately it will, if it's not funded now, we're going to be funding it somewhere else along the line, either through the Medicare or through the Medicaid down the line. So why not pay for more of these services now and keep people healthy and independent for a longer time instead of institutionalized for the last 20 years of their life? It's less expensive to pay for adult day services for 20 years than it is to pay for a nursing home for 20 years. And it seems ridiculous that there is not more funding for people who can't afford it and who their income isn't low enough to qualify for Medicaid services, and their income isn't high enough to pay for private pay or to private pay at the center.
Yep. Now let's.
I may have taken it to a different direction. I'm sorry.
Oh no. No. I think you can never go in a wrong direction here. Let me tell you. I just firmly believe the conversation goes where the conversation's supposed to go. That's just the way I look at things. Because there's always somebody out there that needs to hear whatever is being said. It amazes me. I've done programs and we've gone way off topic, and someone will email me and go, "Oh my gosh, I needed to hear that." So it's
perfect.
That stuff does not bother me at all. There's somebody out there listening right now, or will be listening later, that needs whatever it is that comes out of our mouth. And I just think that it makes it much easier to live life that way.
Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to talk to, because I'm sure there are some listeners thinking, gosh, we don't have one of those in our community. How would I start one of those? Could I start one of those?
Yes.
What do you say to those people?
Open one. I think it's a fabulous business. It is. It will take work. To start, understand if you're good at working with the elderly, what population specifically you'd like to serve, if you'd have a mixed population, how big of a center you'd like to have. You need to be smart about it. I've had people call me who wanted to open a center, with very, very little money and a very small center. And I thought that won't work. You want to, and I hope it's not a horrible thing for me to say, but there's actually a reason behind it, is that centers that open and close and take everything are not going to serve the larger population well. And if you can open a center that's well funded and is big enough to take care of many people and will stay in business for a long time, then you are then serving the populace very well. And that's my goal, is that we have good centers that are well funded, that are not on a shoestring, so that services are not being cut in order to either make money for the owners or because they're not surviving. That we can actually, and it's completely doable, that we can have a good center. You can own a good center that has enough participants per day to give you the profit margin, so that you can live a good life and maybe not own a yacht, but have a good life and be able to provide really good services for your participants. And the good services don't have to be expensive, but a well-funded center doesn't have that added stress, it will always be picked up by the participants, I think, as well. It's the first step would be to look on the internet and find your state's regulations. We do sell a starter package, which includes your state's regulations, a sample floor plan, some operating budgets for different size centers, some other and more information for adult day services and opening a center up. But most states have an association, an adult day association. There's also a national association. And all these are also other resources to look at if you're interested in opening a center, which we need more centers. In our entire country, there's only about 5,000 adult day healthcare centers. If we look across the nation, that's only, my math, 100 centers per state. Is that right?
Yeah, not enough.
100 centers per state, and look at what's going on with our population. They need we're living so much longer, and we need these supports, and this, it can also be thought of people think of it as a place to go, to kind of just get watched, but really there's this health component that is so critical of maintaining health for as long as possible, and it doesn't take much to maintain, but it costs so much to treat.
It really does. What's the average size? Is there an average size of one of these things, or
I don't know. Our National Association probably knows, and there's a really great MetLife report. I would say 50 is about an average size, somewhere between 40 and 50. Centers are as large as 300, and they're as small as 20.
Okay.
I think the center. Go ahead.
I was going to say, and 20 is not small when you've got people with needs, but it's a little bit more quaint. So are you seeing many of these in community centers at all, or are they separate entities? Are you seeing any changes in trends? Can you give us any ideas there?
Managed care, getting into it is, I think, one of the. I'm in California, and we just got managed care has just taken over. It used to be paid directly by. Here it's Medi-Cal. So a big trend would be the managed care becoming the payer sources. But I think that's across the board for a lot of Medicaid programs anyway. It's the managed care coming in. And my hope is that as managed care really gets to see what it is these centers do, that they will then begin paying for more services. If I have a Medicare managed care, if I belong to a Medicare managed care, don't have I don't have Medi-Cal, or Medicaid. I just have the the Medicare managed care. I say that 10 times fast. If I just have that, managed care might say, "Wow, here's Amanda who has been hospitalized for 3 falls in the last year. What's going on?" And nobody's treating the symptom, or nobody's treating the reason for the fall. We're treating the symptoms of the fall. So why am I falling? And adult day services can address the fall issue, and it would be less expensive. And I'm hoping managed care begins to see this. It's less expensive for managed care to have me go to an adult day service center and have someone address my reasons for falling, which can be a myriad of issues, from depression to gait to, I'm standing up too fast and I have hypertension. I'm not taking my medications correctly. I'm not eating well. There's all different reasons for why people fall. Just treating me in the hospital is not going, and at home health is not going to stop it from happening. And so I'm hoping for a trend that the managed care companies will then begin to see the value of adult day services. Somebody who has dementia and who is eligible for nursing home. We have a demonstration project coming up here in California, and I'm sure many other states do as well, that the managed care companies are also going to have to cover long-term care services. So if I have dementia and I'm eligible for nursing home services, but my family would like to keep me at home, it's a lot less expensive for the managed care company to pay for my adult day service than it would be for them to pay for nursing home services.
Yeah. Now, when you say management service, can you define that for us again? I just want to make sure that I'm clear.
Managed care?
Yeah.
You mean managed care? So managed care is so instead of Medicaid, there's Medicare managed, and this is going to be extremely general. So Medicare managed care would be a company that instead of Medicare paying your bills, the managed care company pays your bills, and they oversee all of the services that are provided to you. So where if you went to the doctor before, the doctor would bill Medicare. The doctor would then bill the managed care company. A lot of managed care companies, you have to see a doctor within the companies who's contracted with the company. It's like an insurance. It's like an insurance company or an HMO. You can think of it.
Okay, that's what I wanted to. I wanted to make sure that that we were all clear on who is this entity. and
there's
I
lots
know that
of them.
there's multiples. Yeah.
Yeah. And they're usually private, and they're for profit. So they're looking to save money, and they keep tight controls on services that are provided because they're trying to save money. But as my hope is that as they begin to see that adult day services do save money, and not just the health component, but also the social component, that maybe somebody doesn't need all the services provided at the adult day health care center, but maybe they do need, to go someplace every day so the family can go out and work if there's dementia or Alzheimer's. Then the participant can go. They may not need the full health services. They just need someplace to go during the day to have an activity program and a nutritious meal and the socialization and the stimulation.
Yep, which makes a lot of sense. It's just everything just gets so complicated, throughout the whole system in terms of there's so many levels and variables, and one hand doesn't always know what the other hand is doing, and then you add the family dynamics, and it gets topsy-turvy pretty quick. How about transportation? Because that can be an issue for a lot of people. It's like, this would be great, but how do we get them there? Do they have to drive them, or do these places have their own transportation?
Most centers have transportation. Some you would pay privately for, and some are covered as part of the cost of the center. And they do porch to porch or door to door service. And which is nice, because if I live in California and my mother's in North Carolina, and I want to know that she's been picked up, and I get a call from the adult day health care and say, your mom didn't show up today, that's a huge value to me. And having that mom can't get to the center by herself. I may not be able to take her because I live far away, or because I start work at 7 o'clock in the morning, but she's okay for an hour or two by herself, and then I know the van's going to come pick her up and take her back. So that's a great feature. And understanding that, knowing that the people who use adult day services require transportation. Most centers have transportation or can help arrange for transportation. A lot of cities and counties have transportation services within the county as well. And so that the center should be able to help you with that process, getting the transportation.
Okay, great. Now, if someone out here listening does want to start up a place, you do consulting. Would be able to be hired to help them kind of maneuver through all of this? Okay,
we do
wonderful.
Consulting, and most of the manuals that I've written are for. We've got policy and procedure manual. We've got the forms manuals, care plan manuals for multiple disciplines. Lots of books to help you get started as well. In the consulting, we've got our starter kit, which I mentioned, which kind of is we've got a starter kit, and then we've got a startup in a box package. And the starter kit is kind of an introduction to adult day services in the specific state that you're in, an overview, the regs, and those kind of things. And then our startup in a box is a suite of products, of manuals that most centers require to get opened.
Okay, wonderful. So, that's fantastic to be able to cut through the chase with a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, and it can be complicated. I'm working on a policy and procedure right now for Maryland, a center in Maryland, and I'm writing it. We sell two different types. One is a do-it-yourself, the startup in a box, a do-it-yourself, where you get the information and you would fill in the information specific to your site and specific to your state's regulations. Then we also have a customized version as well, where we would customize the policy and procedure and the forms and anything else that's required specifically to your center and to your state's regulations. And that comes with a guarantee that it'll pass your state's regulatory boards. And we're working on one for Maryland right now, and it's a goodly amount of work.
Yeah,
to make sure everything's in there, and it's an operations manual, and people are well taken care of through their. I'm a believer in paperwork being as integral to our process as well.
Well, in it, you're dealing with the whole bureaucracy. I mean, government's involved in terms of, because you're going to have quality control checks and all of that kind of stuff. So, I mean, this isn't, starting an in-home day program type thing.
It's regulated. It's well regulated. Most states. Some states not as much, but some states are highly regulated.
Mm-hmm. Now, tell us a little bit about your latest book, Cognitive Optimization Program for Adult Day Services.
Great. I'll just start at the very beginning. So I don't know if you mentioned, I'm a licensed social worker in California. So I have a master's degree, and my emphasis is in geriatrics. So I started, really, I really love working with geriatrics, and as hopefully as you can tell, or maybe probably, I love adult day services, and I love adult day services because they take care of people so well, and it's such a perfect option for so many people to remain living in the community, and then to save money to our country, and then to the states as well. And as part of the requirements in California is that I have to take ongoing continuing education units to maintain my license. And a couple of years ago, I was reading through the 2010 Alzheimer's report, and what I read is that there were a lot of studies on health and lifestyle choices and ways of living your life that have an impact on dementia. Mm-hmm. And so and I'm reading through these different lifestyle choices and things people do that affect the dementia rate. And I was looking at them and going, oh, we do this in adult day services. We do this. So nutrition was one, socialization, cognitive stimulation, exercise, emotional health, healthy sleep, and then, the maintenance of good health in general. Those all have a correlation to, they've all been studied and have a correlation to dementia. So I'm reading this and thinking, oh my gosh, adult day health care and adult day care is dementia preventing. I mean, I can't really make that statement, of course, but I was getting very excited to read through this report on all these studies that were done on all kinds of services that are already provided in adult day services, and also in senior centers and also in assisted living programs. They can all adopt this type of these type of services and supporting people's lifestyle choices within this. So this book is written for adult day centers. It's written for assisted living centers, say senior centers, and it goes over. So it's based on the latest research into dementia and Alzheimer's prevention, and it's full of activities and programming suggestions to support the participants' highest level of cognitive health. So it also includes in-services for staff, in-services for the participants, and also a decent section on information about the science and rationale behind the program itself. So it's a whole program for these centers to give what we're already doing a little more oomph. So we're already providing nutrition. We already provide diet. We already provide meals. There's the studies show that the Mediterranean diet actually has an impact. There's a theory that 50% of dementias are preventable based on how we live our lives. So if we get enough, exercise has been shown to. There's no question about the exercise. The other ones are correlations, but exercise has been proven to have an effect on dementia, either slowing the process of dementia or preventing it. So all the adult day centers and most assisted living, all these programs can incorporate an exercise program into their center, and the targeted cognitive stimulation. There's ways of stimulating the brain that are better than others. So these programs on brain stimulation, and it's the whole program is an integrated program of services and education and support for cognitive optimization.
Wow. So there's just lots going on. Lots going on. And it's all very very exciting. I have to tell you though that when you said you were passionate about this, it really doesn't come across in your voice at all.
No. I'll have to work on that a little bit.
Yeah, but it's so nice to have somebody out there in the corner of Adult Day, because I like you, I very much agree that this is it's a wonderful resource, and it's just not being tapped into. And I get so frustrated because why aren't we funding more of these? But with so many things, the research hasn't been done to prove to prove that it really works. And it needs to get done. Is there any grant work going on to help fund? There
are grants. There are some studies that are out there right now. One of the studies that's being done, I know California's got one that they're just in the infancy stages of, and then the National Association. And I apologize, National Association, if I blow this, but it has to do with the stress. They're testing the stress levels of the caregivers of people who go to Adult Day services. So they're doing it through a saliva. Again, I apologize if I'm just messing this up completely national, but I'm doing my best. If they happen to be listening, they're taking a saliva. They take a saliva swab and actually test the chemicals, the stress hormone chemicals, and before and then after so much time. And there's actually been shown. It hasn't been published yet, but it's about. They show that by going to Adult Day services, there actually is a decrease in the stress hormone of caregivers. And caregiver stress is a major influencer of institutionalization. So if somebody's a very stressful caregiver, the chances of a participant being institutionalized is much, much higher. So that's one of the tests to show that it really does decrease the stress levels of the caregivers. And there isn't, we're even though we've been around for 20, 30 years, the industry, 40 years maybe at this point, in some states, we're still in our infancy. We still need to get ourselves out there, need to show that, this industry is works. And although the studies specifically within the industry haven't been done, studies showing what we do in our centers have proven to have health benefits or have proven to be dementia preventing or delaying the progression of mild cognitive impairment. Those studies have been done, and as centers and as people who are proponents of this industry, we need to know what those studies are so that we can say, look, all these studies show that what we are doing is, supporting the better health of our participants. That's kind of a beginning stage, I feel, too, is the more we know, which is what I tried to do which is what I did with the book. Is these are the studies that support what we already do.
Wonderful. We just have a couple of minutes left. Is there any last minute thing that you want to tell people? Otherwise, we'll give them your contact information, and hopefully they're just pounding down your doors to open up an Adult Day in their area.
It would be great. I'd love anybody who wants to contact me. I can talk about this all day long, and I really truly believe that it is where we need to go as a country with our health care. Is more on the, and people have said this for years, more on the wellness side of things, and supporting families and caregivers to take care of people. So we're not straining our loved ones by having to, by making them move somewhere they may not want to live and moving away from their loved ones, and supporting our we need smart choices of how we spend our money in healthcare, and I think that this is it.
I so agree. Well, how do people get a hold of you, Amanda?
The best way is through my website, and let me give you the address, and they can look it up, and then I'll also give my email address. So the website is www.total, A as in apple, D as in dog, H as in hat, C as in cat, .com. So it's totaladhc.com. And my website is AGS for Amanda Graham Sillars at totaladhc.com.
Okay, wonderful. Well, I thank you so much for being with us today. It was really a pleasure to get to know you.
Lori, thank you so much for having me on and, really being open to adult day services and helping to get the word out. I appreciate it so much. Thank you.
Well, thank you. You have a great week. And when you talk to me, Nicole, tell her I say hi. I hear you guys have been chatting.
We have been. Thank you.
Oh, good. We'll talk soon.
All right.
Thanks.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Well, that was a very interesting conversation. I just love doing these shows because I learn so much, and hopefully you are as well. I did put in the chat box a link to the KSTP TV feature that was done on our Memory Cafe. I would love if you guys would copy and paste it and go watch it. It'll take 3 or 4 minutes of your time. And then, in addition, if you wouldn't mind making a comment with your thoughts, I think the more that the media knows people need these and people are commenting and hitting on it, hopefully we'll be able to get more coverage for that. Again, if you're looking for a Alzheimer's Association anywhere in the world, go to Alzheimer's Disease International. And don't forget about the Tau studies. You can find them on Facebook under the Alzheimer's team, or you can just Google Alzheimer's studies. If you're dealing with Lewy body dementia, again, check them out. They've got their own association. And we will talk to you next time. Enjoy your week. Bye now.
Hi, I'm Lori LeBay, and I wanted to tell you about Alzheimer's Speaks, which is another great podcast. You see, my own mother lived with dementia for 30 years, and I felt lost. Did you know every 3 seconds someone in the world is being diagnosed with dementia? Odds are it's going to hit your families too. We want to help you connect to services, products, tools, research, and stories so you can be prepared. Please subscribe to Alzheimer's Speaks on your favorite podcast platform.